Mitch McConnell's bill dies a quick death in the Senate today. Such a quick death that it didn't even have time for a burial in the Temple of Doom's backyard. The vote was no surprise. In fact, Captain Obvious called the roll call. So why is this actually great news for you to get eventually your second stimulus checks? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Afternoons LALATE, and hope you're good and safe. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate you for joining me this afternoon, our 2-hour programming block that starts with checks, this video, then hazard pay right after this within 30 minutes, then unemployment, which will cover FPUC, LWA, UI, and PUA. That's 1 hour from now. And finally, rent, including evictions and mortgage foreclosures. Shocking news minutes ago as Mitch McConnell's bill died a quick death in the Senate. I mean, we saw this coming. I'll have a recap of what happened with that vote, why the bill ever was drafted that way, why this is really incredible news, great news for you for getting second stimulus checks, as most of the viewers thought that this was never going to be the conduit, the means in which to get your second stimulus checks, a crappy bill with a crappy presentation, and what you should be looking for in the next couple of days. Additionally, I'll have a recap of big financial and economic details coming out late this afternoon, which you should be on high alert for. Let's get to the incredible news right now, this afternoon on a Thursday. Hope you're good and safe. It's a little bit muggy here as the heat has come back and the fires are still brewing. A Republican bill introduced no less than 48 hours ago died a quick death. It did not get the number of votes to survive, and that was not an unpredicted outcome. It got 52 votes, short of the 16 needed to overcome a Democratic filibuster threat. And that was it. All Democrats voted against it. All Republicans, with the exception of Rand Paul, voted in favor of it. And that was done. Ironically, the net result is, why didn't you just do this in July? You could have done, if you could do it 48-hour turnaround, why don't we just do this in July? Why do we have to wait to September to do this nonsense? Ironically, I tweeted out the news by saying, congratulations, the crappy bill is dead, because that really is what the crappy bill was. No one was excited about the bill, and so it's actually now reassuring that we don't have to talk about this crappy bill anymore. What's really troubling, though, as we look back on the last 7 days, is the snake oil we were given by Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary to Donald Trump, Mike Pence, Vice President to Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff to Donald Trump, and other people like Mitch McConnell, who literally told us every single rosy story you could be told about this bill. Mark Meadows said the bill would be passed within 1 day by both houses of Congress. It didn't pass even a single House of Congress. Mark Meadows said that it would include a stimulus check. So did Steve Mnuchin. So did Donald Trump. So did Mike Pence. So did Larry Kudlow. It didn't have a stimulus check in there. And then they said that they had been negotiating around the clock for several weeks with Democrats and Republicans to get this approved. Doesn't appear that that ever happened, because not a single Democrat skipped party lines to vote in favor of it. So, as we sit here today, how do we look at that, or do we look at what events occurred today, and why did this even occur in the first place? First, there seems to be no apparent scheme as to why this bill was ever introduced, with the exception of two possibilities. One, it was something to show face, or save face? Save face. Yeah, that's a werewolf's expression, shave face. Save face. It was only to save face for Republicans in the Senate who think they are up for losing their seats. Ironically, and even the news reporters thought that this was really weird. After the vote came in, Mitch McConnell told Broadcast News that he thinks certain GOP seats, Republican seats, are going to be lost in the Senate because of today. Okay, that's real positive. He thinks Iowa, Georgia, and Montana are going to flip. Well, That's quite interesting. And he says that the failure of today may have done the deed to turn the Senate Democratic. Interesting. Well, we're not here to worry about your jobs. We're here to worry about our jobs and our stimulus checks. Where the hell are they? So as we sit here on a Thursday afternoon and we're wondering about stimulus checks, we're wondering about FPUC, we're wondering about hazard pay, and we're wondering about rent aid and food stamps and food and things like that. Where are they and where will they possibly land, and what should we look for going forward? Some of these are easy to answer. Some of them are not easy to answer. I fully have to disclose that at the beginning. The ones that appear to be more straightforward are stimulus checks and FPUC. Ironically, when this started to unfold no less than 48 hours ago, when we, as viewers of this channel, part of the Purple Power, saw this very horrible bill being introduced without stimulus checks after we had been lied to by all these Republican leaders over the last couple of days, we thought, okay, we never thought that there was going to be in that bill. We thought it was going to come by executive order. The resounding reaction by viewers has been that everyone thought that stimulus checks were going to come by executive order. I added on to that last night and again this morning that I believe that it's highly possible that your FPUC extension, which would be called LWA again, will also come by executive order, or will be just refunded under the current executive order. More about that in a second. But as we sit here this afternoon, there's really a lack of clarity about hazard pay's future, rent aid, which is different than rent eviction moratorium, food stamps, and any other type of financial grant relief that we have all been looking for. Let's get to the details now. I'll be addressing rent and hazard pay in the later videos, but let me address stimulus checks right now. In all universes that anyone is looking at the situation in a nonpartisan Purple Power view right now, no one thinks that this president can get reelected if he doesn't send out stimulus checks. They just don't think it's going to happen. The economic situation is so dire that even if the real estate market starts to collapse, even if Wall Street starts to collapse, even if everything around us starts to collapse, unemployment gets worse, more business shutdowns, more lockdowns. If you sent out stimulus checks just by themselves and didn't do any other stimulus, you might still get reelected, even with everything else collapsing around us in the next 8 to 12 weeks. But if you don't do stimulus checks and you don't do any other stimulus, there's no way, no how that this president could ever get reelected. So will he send out the stimulus checks? When would he do it? How would he do it? And what's the manner in which he could do it? You know, what's going to happen over the next, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks is a wait and see. And a lot of people don't like to wait and see. That has been sort of the message of this channel since the very first day I launched on April 25th, which is remain positive, remain focused, you're going to get the money. My position is unchanged as it sits here today. It was unchanged when I recorded on April 25th when no one had gotten an EIDL grant. No one thought we were ever going to get EIDL grant. It went on for at least a month till any person in the United States ever reported receiving a single penny for EIDL grants. And for 30 days, I recorded the same message. Don't give up hope. You will get your grant money. And eventually, some people slowly started to get some, and some got some thereafter. And eventually, everyone got their grant in some amount at some point. That seems to be where we are as we hit a moment this afternoon, Thursday. First, I don't want you to have any emotional reaction to what happened today with Mitch. It was a crappy bill. Why should we be emotionally tied to something that's a crappy bill? Did you want PPP money? Did you want another loan of PPP money and a round of PPP for you? No, you really didn't. No one did, because people left PPP the last time around in the coffers of PPP and SBA. No one went and got it. Did you want $300 a week FPUC 2.0? Most of the viewers' comments said no, that was not going to be sufficient, but you would still be happy with $300. A lot of viewers absolutely despise that $100 threshold. And then, did you win any of these other crappy things on the bill? Like $100 billion for the postal service? No, you don't care about that. $200 billion for farmers. I do have some farmers on this channel, but no. Did you want liability insurance so you don't get sued because you own a business? No, you didn't want that either. So you should not be emotionally tied to today's developments, and should not create any type of reaction emotionally to you, whether you're getting stimulus checks or not. You should remain focused on where the focus is, the potential of executive order. It will remain our focus going forward that you need to continue your tweeting of the president. You need to continue your tweeting of Mnuchin, Meadows, and all the people saying, send out the stimulus checks. Send them out. You know, yesterday I tweeted a video where the president was interviewed about stimulus checks in June and said they're going to come out in the next few weeks. He didn't say, they're going to come out by Congress. They're going to come out in the next couple of weeks. Yesterday, I also ran the transcript of an interview every single month since the month of June, all the way up to the present, at which the president has said he's sending out stimulus checks. Well, send the damn stimulus checks out. If you don't send them out, what are we going to think about you? Are we going to really have faith in you? Now we have sat here and heard you're sending out stimulus checks and you haven't sent them out. Ultimately, I don't want you to get angry. What I want you to do is get focused and really direct your attention to the person who can exert his executive authority, and that is the president. First, we know that he has the amount of money to send out the stimulus checks. 2, we know that he has the inherent authority to send out the second stimulus checks. 3, we know you would get the second stimulus checks about within 10 days thereafter. 4, we know that the stimulus checks would give you some financial relief, even if it does have a provision like a $500 dependent provision instead of $1,200. But if we sit back and do much of nothing, then he may do much of nothing. In a day in which his focus is Bob Woodward, not stimulus checks, and holding a press conference talking about Afghanistan war numbers and Syria war numbers, is he's talking about your stimulus checks? Well, I had to cut away from that interview, that press conference, to record with you. But the focus needs to be on stimulus checks first. The president has said he wants to give you a $1,200 stimulus check, and he's also said he wants to give you a more generous stimulus check. I detailed earlier this week that there's $300 billion that the president identified last Friday. That compensates at least $1,800 per individual. Now, I want to make very clear, because I said this before, I'm going to say it again. What I'm saying to you is that if you take $300 billion and divide it by the number of people who got stimulus checks the first time around, it comes to a net result of an amount more than $1,200, hence showing that there's enough money to send you a $1,200 stimulus check. I am not saying you're getting an $1,800 stimulus check, nor have I ever said that, but there's enough to give you a $1,200 stimulus check, and this is what's incredible great news. Second, we know where the money is and where the money's not. It's in an agency that administers relief to American citizens impacted by the pandemic starting in early spring, and the money was unused because the president told us it was for relief for the COVID and was unused. So it's not in Treasury. He does not need authority of Congress to send it out. That's also great news. Third, people have asked me this question. I want to answer it certainly. It's not really something you should be hyper-technically concerned about, but people have asked me, well, let's say the money is leftover PPP money, which I think it is. Let's say it's leftover PPP money and it's in SBA because SBA administers PPP. SBA can send the money out. We all know that. SBA sends out money very quickly and is very good at it. So how would SBA find you? Well, that's a really great question. Ultimately, IRS or other agencies could couple up with SBA to ensure the money's sent out, or there could be certainly a different process in which you apply to get the money and then the money is sent to you electronically. There's all that type of stuff where you apply and then it's sent to you. There's all that about, but I don't want you to be sort of tied up with how does I get to me and how do I go and here do you go. What you certainly should be a focus on some of the issues that we simply just don't know. Dependents, would it be $500? Child support, would it be taken out for child support? We simply just don't know. I have no clarity. I have nothing else to tell you. And what I do have to tell you is don't focus on what happened today. So does today mean something different for purposes of Congress? Should you be focused anywhere in what's happening with Congress? As I sit here today on a Thursday afternoon where the situation is very fluid, I'm certainly going to take this position, which is ignore Congress. Ignore Congress at this point because I don't see anything else happening with Congress, at least now. There was a time that we all talked about, well, Steve and Nancy could agree upon a deal. Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi could agree upon a deal, and then could bring Congress back in session, call the Senate back in session from the vacation, call the House back in session from the vacation, and vote on something. Well, that moment seems to have been long past by now. So I don't see any progress with Congress. I don't see any progress with Steve and Nancy. Now, that could certainly change. I mean, it could literally change within 24 hours. And ultimately, it could change, and it should change. With a president whose position as of last Friday was, I'm not going to give the Democrats everything that they want to do, otherwise I'm going to stay where I am. Well, the net result is if you don't send out stimulus in some form, whether it's executive order or not, because you didn't want to give the, as he calls it, the entire House or the entire barn to the Democrats, well, ultimately what happened is he won't be reelected. You can't go into the fall election without stimulus. You absolutely cannot as a president. It just won't work. And so as we sit here today, what else should be really an impetus to sending out stimulus checks by executive order? Economic data. Economic data came out today. It's not good. It's not good, and the viewers reacted immediately on Twitter. Viewers actually reacted before I put out the data, which I just love it. I mean, there's nothing that gets me more excited and more happy for this channel when viewers are coming out with the economic data and economic information and developments in the Senate. Before I can even get to the computer and type a word, they know the implication of it, and they're ready to pounce, and I adore that. So viewers, early this morning, we're already tweeting the new economic labor numbers. These are jobless claims. Every Thursday since the pandemic hit in March, I've been reporting this channel since April 25th, there's a new labor number released every Thursday. Now, this is jobless claims, first-time jobless claims, meaning this is a person who just went on unemployment this week. If they had been on unemployment before and then went off and then went back on, they're not in this number. This is not an employment number, it's an unemployment number. And where did it land? It landed in a poor spot. It went up. It got worse. It got worse. We're not seeing improvement. We were at 22 or 23 weeks of 1 million unemployment claims per week, new unemployment claims per week. 2 weeks ago, the worst run since the Great Depression. It went for 2 weeks, it got a little bit better, just marginally better, about 100,000 better. But today, it went the other direction again. It got worse. In some states, the numbers are absolutely horrific. Now, someone certainly dropped in the comments earlier today that this is sort of a Democratic reaction, but I really don't think so. California's labor force is now 40% unemployed. 40% of its labor force is unemployed. Someone said, well, that's a Democratic thing. No, because a lot of California is Republican. Some parts of California are completely Republican, other parts are very Democratic. LA is a very Democratic area. Orange County is a very Republican area, but it doesn't really matter. It's a number about labor, and labor does not show to partisan issues. The point is that in a state that, is not in financial disarray, the unemployment numbers are absolutely horrific. So what does that mean? That means that as we sit here in September, yeah, I just missed a whole month there. As we sit here in September, the numbers could get worse. Other economic factors that were released today continue to implode. In New York, the real estate market, which is a very key indicator of all segments of the economy, showed the worst vacancy rate for apartments in New York in any time that they've ever been recording the data for over 20 years. This is what Marco Rubio had talked about, that you can't start to let certain parts of the economy slowly implode, whether it's real estate, apartments, homelessness, economic measures, and if you don't deal with them quickly, things will get worse. It's Thursday, and it's Throwback Thursday, and in that spirit, I have to throw it back to a comment that I remember reading on this show about 2 months ago. which is when a person said, when you're doing stimulus, you don't just throw a little bit stimulus on the fire, because a little stimulus may result in a very slow recovery over many, many years rather than a sharp, quick recovery. Today we have no stimulus. And that's really where we sit. The analysts in that report said you have to throw lots of stimulus very quickly and very certain. And when I started recording these videos, I said you have to have a $2,000 check every month for 6 months until the pandemic ends or until unemployment improves. You have to send out stimulus checks every single month. And now, as we sit in September, there hasn't been a stimulus check since March. And for many Americans, especially if you're on SSDI, SSI, Social Security, Railroad benefits, there hasn't ever been a stimulus check if they're dependent on the child's tax return. It's at times like this that a stimulus check has to be sent out. And yeah, I could do a tirade video. I could sit here and just be a big, BITACH and just tirade and go after the president and tell you to share the video and post it on Twitter and say, hey, here's a guy giving a real pitch about why you have to send out stimulus checks. But I don't have to, because you already have that spirit. You're part of the purple power, and you know what has to get done, and you know where you have to vote, and you know where you have to move. And so take this video, take any other video of this channel that you think really ignites your fire, and send it to your elected officials, but especially send it to the White House and say, send out stimulus checks now by executive order. Send out FPUC by executive order, LWA, and get it done. Or I can't vote for you. You haven't helped me. That's the spirit of this channel, and we'll continue to stay motivated, stay positive, stay focused, and I want you to not worry about what happened today. Coming up next is hazard pay. At the front of this channel is a subscribe button. Subscribe to this channel because it really helps getting you information the quickest way possible. If you subscribed and you don't see a little red button next to your name, then you may not have hit the button right way. So go into the pinned comment to this video written by me that'll explain how to ensure that you unsubscribe and then resubscribe. When you've done it right, there'll be a red button next to your name. I respond to people who subscribe before other people who are unsubscribed. Finally, like this video. It helps in the algorithm. We've been doing really quite well. It's days like this that there's a lot of strange twists and turns. It's important to get the correct news out there. Coming up next is hazard pay. That $10,000 from the HEROES Act, which we're waiting around for. Is there still hope for it? Stay tuned for that. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, stay focused, and stay in LA for more.